Commissioner Smith?
Here.
Commissioner Roth?
Here.
Commissioner Mum?
Here.
Commissioner Pauly?
Here.
Mayor Neely?
Here. Please join me in the flag salute. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There are two ladies with us that are dressed in green. That may have something to do with what they're going to do. We have a duet here from Willamette Falls Symphony Orchestra, and I think they'll be coming. Do you want to come forward here? And I'm going to walk up there, and probably most of us, to hear what I think we're going to hear. Is the green significant?
I think so.
Okay, very good. Marty and Marcia, do you want to introduce yourselves and say something about what you do?
I'm Marcia Mickey, and I play clarinet in the symphony, and this is Marcia Fisher, and she plays the organ. Oh, do I really need that?
Yes, you do.
Oh, okay. Anyway, we have a concert coming up on March 17th, which happens to be St. Patrick's Day. Okay. And our concerts are all in Oregon City, and this is at 3 o'clock, and I have some little handouts, so I didn't bring nearly enough, because I didn't know there would be all these people here. But I'm going to leave these here, so if you have any interest, come and hear it. Now, the concert, not surprisingly, is going to feature Irish music, and we're doing an Irish symphony by Harty and an Irish Rhapsody by Stanford, which are both, I'd never heard either of them before, but they're really cool works. I think anybody would like them. You don't have to be a classical music, fanatic to like these. But the real showpiece of this concert is going to be, we have 3 winners of our Young Soloist competition that we held in January, and they are just fantastic. And they are playing some really hard music, and they are playing it amazingly well. So just come hear them. If you know any young people, especially that are musicians, bring them, because I think they'll love the concert.
Is that at the United Methodist Church? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, on South End Road in Oregon City. And, actually, I'll put some of these on either side here. Okay, now Marcia and I are just going to play 2 quick little things. One of them is just a little Mozart ditty to get, you all relaxed for the meeting. Irish tune from County Derry by Percy Granger, but it's otherwise known as Danny Boy. So this will get you thinking Irish.
last very long.
A little early, but we've got the summer concert series that's going to be coming up. Willamette Falls Symphony Orchestra is always part of that concert series, and I think that usually starts on the Thursday of the week that follows the July 4th. Is that right? I think so. And they're usually the lead group, so they're a great group to come to see, and I think we've got a great group coming for the concert series itself. So it's going to be 8 or 6 weeks, 7 or 8 weeks worth of symphony of music at the Carnegie Park on Thursdays during the summer. With that, I'm going to go ahead and am privileged to give an oath of office to a reserve officer. Caleb Woodrow, and I forgot to bring the oath, but that's being corrected right now. Our diligent student. Thank you.
So I'd like everybody to meet Caleb. Caleb Woodrow is our newest Oregon City Reserve Officer. And a little bit of background on Caleb. He's a graduate of Eastern Washington University, and he's currently studying for his MBA at Marylhurst University. And one nice thing about a reserve officer is their time is strictly voluntary. In other words, they don't get paid for doing what they do. And Oregon City is very lucky. We have a lot of volunteers throughout the community, but I really appreciate the effort that our reserve officers go through, because they actually have to graduate from a reserve police academy. And it starts in September and it finishes in February. It requires 2 nights a week, and usually every Saturday and some Sundays throughout the Reserve Academy. So there's a big time commitment these guys have to do to become a reserve officer. And our reserve officers go through the same hiring process our regular officers do. In other words, they go through the same background investigation, the same physical, psychological evaluations. So they are held to the same hiring standards as our regular officers are. One interesting thing about Caleb is that his wife had a baby in the middle of the Reserve Academy, and we didn't find out till a little bit later, and he never missed a day of the academy or an hour of the academy why this happened. So that's very amazing. He's able to do that, and I'm actually surprised he's still married. But anyway, well, she's not here today. Hopefully that's not related. But anyway,
Okay. I'm going to have you go ahead and take the oath. I'll state it, and you can repeat after me.
Okay.
I state your name.
I, Caleb Woodrow,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will uphold the law
that I will uphold the law
and support the Constitution of the United States and the state of Oregon.
and support the Constitution of the United States and the state of Oregon.
I will abide by a law enforcement code of ethics
I will abide by the law enforcement code of ethics
and the department's rules and regulations
and the department's rules and regulations
while faithfully performing my duties as reserve police officer for Oregon City.
while faithfully performing my duties as a reserve officer for Oregon City, Oregon.
It's given on March 13th. Very welcome to our reserve officers.
Thank you, sir.
He's a great guy to work with, and it's a great city manager, and you got a wonderful city commission. This is the time for just a moment. Make sure I got this right. Okay, very good. This is the time that we direct for citizens' comments for items that are not on the agenda. Anybody that's going to speak, we've got a request that you keep it to 3 minutes, and I'm going to invite, first of all, Alice Richmond, and then Mike Mitchell. Would you please come up and take a seat as well?
Hi, Alice.
Those of us who have served on the water board know Alice quite well. Southport.
I'm wearing a different coat. Same hat, maybe?
Yeah.
Am I first?
You are.
Okay.
You only get 3 minutes. Not like you do at the water board.
Even Oregon City Mayor and Commissioners, good evening, and I want to thank you for this opportunity. I'll start quickly and take as little time as I can. So I'll read this letter because it says it all, and then I will submit it to you for the records. Oh, nobody's going to steal this, Doc. It's nailed in here. Yes. Okay. I'm going to give you a little bit of history because I don't even think that, you might know, but you might not know that. I came west from New York City to settle in Clackamas County in December of 1958. You weren't born. Since then, I've been active in one thing or another in the county and the city of West Linn, and now I live there, of course, in Oregon, and believe it or not, I was told that even they know me in Washington, D.C. Truly. My aspirations are widely known locally, and the reason I am writing this letter is simple. For several years now, we've been organizing West Linn annual 4th of July Day celebration concerts and fireworks that is at the Willamette Park. It's west of our river. This event draws a multitude of, from both sides of our city, a lot of crowd. They all enjoy it. So I had in March of 2010, back then, I had the occasion to talk with Alice, number 2, Norris. She knew her place too. And so with that, I thought she was very excited and very enthused about this thing. And so when I also had, for a couple of minutes, talk with the current mayor of Oregon City, I thought I'll bring it in here and present it officially. Would Oregon City be willing to graciously share the cost of the fireworks show? I am a nonprofit volunteer. I'm not with nobody's fee. I've been doing this since 1905. Only 1 year that I was out of my pocket for $3,000. But anyway, I solely organize and raise funds to purchase all the necessity for this annual fireworks celebration. This is a labor of love for me, but funding is always a challenge, and we all know that. So often our cities share events in positive ways and always successful. I remember last time I was the pilot, the guide in the trolley in here over the thing. It brings the two rivers city together and creates joy for the children and parents, strictly, in our area. It promotes community and family values. It provides opportunity to celebrate our great nation on Independence Day. Not before, not after. This event is free to all who attend from both of our city, and I believe it is the right thing to do. It is. Because they talk to me from both sides of the river and then some, and you know. The smile and hugs, the rewards I enjoy doing this volunteering endeavor. But this annual festivity depends greatly on generosity from donors who share my belief and into our communities that enrich the opportunity together in an organized, disciplined celebration. I haven't yet had any problem. I'm not going to go further on that one. I am hopeful you will consider sponsoring a portion or whatever of this wonderful annual celebration that is so greatly appreciated and anticipated by the residents of both of our cities. And thing I want to close in actually is that this is advertised in the newspapers, the colleges, everywhere. I would like to have also, it's very timely yet to put also Oregon City right along the logo of West Lynn. The city doesn't do it. It wouldn't happen, whether it's for the resident on this side of the river, on that side of the river. I have come from North Dakota. They're going to take vacation to the beach, and they like to come, and they call me to, how do I get off in Puerto Rico on I-205? They got the maps, on the dashboard and everything else. And I thought they were really pulling my legs. No. And when I said, I want to meet you, I'll have my name in the back and the hat and all that. Sure enough, they were from North Dakota. Then last year, I have a call from Medford. And they wanted to talk to somebody that is the 4th of July canceled. I said, why? I said, because and it is. Last year, it was a lot of people were canceling it. City or whoever were organizing them. I said, well, no, it's not canceled last I know of it. He said, well, could you make this, can I talk to somebody that can tell me that for theory after you're talking? See, my accent kind of makes the little bit, put me exactly what I want. And so saying that, they came and I wanted to meet them too. They had friends around in the neighborhood in here, and they choose to come up in here and probably, stay a couple days. It draws. It's all in discipline. I don't know where they park, but it is all in unison. Everybody has a wonderful time. So I'm going to give you this packet in here, including Alice Norris's letter back there to show you that, yes, think about it. Any help?
I have a question, Alice.
Yeah.
Where is the actual fireworks list?
Actual fireworks is, I have, it's all, I'm giving you how much it's going to cost
is it
me,
in?
this and everything in there.
And where the location
Yeah.
is?
It's, I have the military people do it, so all I have to do every year, instead of also having somebody on the barge, you rent the barge, you do this, you do that. They don't make money on me, these guys. So everything in here is the dynamites. I buy them wholesale. And every year I have somebody that does it. I get the names and all that. I say, here, Mark, now follow it up. You know what I'm saying? And so this year I have a retired colonel from West Point with his buddies going to do it. He says it's all in here.
Do they do it on a barge then?
No. It is so that because Betty is on the river, on both sides right there, the fire department rescue for the river, they tell me, how is we going to give you somebody from Borland over there to help you? Because I do have people to help me out for, I want to know for discipline, but so people behave a little bit. And I said, what's wrong with our guys? I said, they're going to be on the river from both sides of the city even. Because I have about 800 to 1,000 boats. I can go anywhere. Once I'm in there, I don't know what's happened out there. Because it's packed.
Okay.
Everybody have a good time.
Thank you, Alice.
So saying that,
Okay, thank you. You leave it with the city recorder.
Right here.
And Alice said she spoke to me for 2 minutes. That you notice what the multiplying factor in terms of what a definition of 2 minutes is. My recollection, it was a half hour, but it's comparable sort of to 3 minutes you took. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice.
Appreciate it.
see, you're doing more talking now.
Alice, apparently your glasses fell down on the floor there. Yeah.
I knew it'll come back to me. I would have, you probably would have brought it to me this coming next Thursday.
Bye, Alice.
Bye, Alice. Thank you.
Everybody for your patience. I hope to see you all at the 4th of July.
Very good. Thank you. Mike,
We're going to have also Yankee Doodle.
you better start or you won't have a chance. Go ahead.
Go, Michael.
That's a tough act to follow.
Next year I
Your 3 minutes are up, Alice.
We're quick enough.
My name is Mike
Come on,
Mitchell.
Mike, let's go.
My name is Mike Mitchell. I'm an Oregon City resident, and I'm honored to serve as chair of your Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee. And I'm here tonight to speak to you on behalf of PRAC. As you all know, we have been talking about the idea of an off-leash dog park for Oregon City for a long time. Discussions between PRAC members, with city staff, with community members. We've got a couple of consensuses of opinion that I'd kind of like to share with you. First, if what we're headed for, and we think what we need, is a dedicated, fenced, exclusive dog use park, ultimately. And when you look at the size need of that kind of facility and our existing park facilities, we simply don't think that there is a good spot to try to put that into one of our existing parks without ending up with something that's undersized or too much of a detriment to what else might go on in that park. As much as we'd like to have that, we just don't have the land in a built park. Secondly, what we believe is the right way to do this is to master plan that kind of a dedicated, fenced, exclusive facility as a part of the master planning in one of the parks that we hope to bring online, an undeveloped park now, or in an undeveloped phase of a park that we currently have. That takes time, and that takes money, both of which are in short supply. So we're left, we feel, with a situation where we've got an immediate need and an immediate desire from the community and a solution that's quite some time out. And this is why I'm here tonight to speak to you. PRAC has heard that the Commission mentioned or discussed, at least mentioned, the idea of allowing off-leash dogs in one or more of our existing parks. I believe that's something that the Commission has at least mentioned. And I'm here to tell you on behalf of PRAC that we fully support that concept. We encourage it strongly. We hope you'll go forward with it as soon as possible. And the members of PRAC are ready to support and aid in whatever you want us to be involved in, to whatever degree, to help make that happen. We think it's a great first step to get us to what the community needs. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And what you might do is perhaps devote some time to making some suggestions as to what parks they are. You can get input from the community, of course. I know I've got one across the street that functions that way, and almost everybody cleans up after their dogs, so it's not an issue to the neighbors.
Right. We'd be happy to do that and bring forward some suggestions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Would Dave Trudeau and Tom Guile come forward, please? And the person called first is the person that speaks first. I don't know.
Good evening, Dave Prideaux, Oregon City. I've spent a lot of time trying to collect my thoughts and decide how to present this. And I'm still struggling with it, but basically I'm trying to make a plea for open government and citizen participation. And I'm taking kind of a longer view of history in approaching this, and I'd like to start with my involvement with Measure 3407, and then briefly mention the LGPI, the fee undercharge issue, and then end with 6B on the agenda here, which is the Blue Heron and other ways that the city operates. And again, my idea is basically citizen participation. Quoting from the meeting minutes in October of 2007, Eddie Alec said this. He was opposed to the way that urban renewal was being done. The City Commission was taking the opposition for granted and was circumventing the system because it did not think people were smart enough to listen. As to Section 57, to not send this to the voters was ignoring the will of the public. And just briefly to jump to the LGPI report about the fee issue, I noticed that the city manager was not even mentioned in this, but Mr. Conca was stated that his position requires that he communicate effectively with staff on work-related issues and ensure the staff is properly trained. And I just think that it's important for city staff to keep this in mind, that it's not just a job, it's not just you're getting a paycheck, but you're being paid by taxpayer dollars. You need to listen to the citizens. You need to proactively work with the people of the community. And again, to close this out as far as the Blue Heron, I have heard a little disgruntlement, like it's there's discussions going on, and I just would like to, I think you people are responsive, but just keep it open. Try to include people. I'd like to close with a Shaw Spady quote back at that 2007 meeting. What about the dynamic of citizen participation? How is it integrated? How would citizens participate in the future? Would it be like other land use processes, or would the citizens be part of the funding decisions? How exactly would it be integrated, and at what levels and stages? And I think that's part of city government, is to do our best to include citizens. Thank you.
Just a comment, and you may know this, but the Blue Heron site will go through a master planning process, and that is a public process. I mean, the only thing that I'm aware of that we've dealt with is looking at due diligence issues regarding potential hazardous waste there, identifying what's in the floodplain and what's outside the floodplain. That's been our effort at this time. So I don't know that there's anything that is a secret.
I'd just like to encourage that to continue. Thank you.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mr. Guile.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Tom Guile, Oregon City resident and moderator chair of CIC for another month. Something's come up as an issue that I don't know if you can actually address it, because I think it's beyond everyone right now. We asked at the CIC Monday night because someone had called me and asked me about the CRW recall, and they had gotten a ballot, and they live further south in Oregon City than we on the north end. And I said I didn't know anything about the ballot. And so as it turned out, when we asked the CIC on Monday night, asked everyone to show of hands of who all received ballots. And it was interesting how many people around the city had received ballots. Yet Barlow Crest, where Barbara's located, Trailview did not receive ballots. So then I called Sherry Hall, and I talked to her yesterday and said, I don't understand why some are receiving ballots who shouldn't be and we're not. And she said she had the same question and called the state, because we were both saying don't want another black eye for poor Sherry. And she said, but CRW was the one who sent the addresses out. So then this morning she suggested I call them. The CFO from CRW called me, and we had Carol Brick, I think is her name, Brick, and we had a conversation, and also the Oregonian and Oregon City News called. We had conversations. It's interesting, though, that we were talking about, I had talked previously about, I wondered what the Oregon City rollback water issue how it might impact us, but it wouldn't, because we're in CRW. Now, interestingly, we get to vote on that water rollback, and yet you don't set the rates for us. But CRW sets our rates, but yet we can't vote for the board members on that. So they kind of explained to me about the districting and the how it was annexed into city water, but you can't provide water to people up in the north end and Barlow Crest and Trailview because of the height or something to that impact. The point of all this is that we had a meeting a week ago, and the HOA told all our neighbors, this summer you have to keep your lawns green. No more browning out your lawns. And we started discussion on water rollbacks. That's an HOA thing, not a city thing, homeowners association. And we were talking about, well, if the rates go up, we may have to let them go brown. But CRW, as they told me today, the rates did increase last year. They are going to increase substantially again this summer. And I asked, well, how would that compare with the Oregon City water rollback and when they increase at 3%, et cetera? And her comment was that they always watch what's going on in neighboring cities, Portland, Westland, just to see if their rates are within the realm of what the other ones are doing. But what I found was interesting, and Barbara and I were talking earlier out there, is we cannot even vote for their board and yet they can raise the rates on us, but we get to vote for Oregon City, but we have no say-so for the actual water for us. Again, that's nothing you can probably control. It's kind of a conundrum. They're all confused. Well, how come we can do this, but we can't do that? And it's just kind of frustrating. And we know for a fact, if you read the papers, I'm sure that Ms. Holloway, I've never met her, talked to her, she's probably going to say, well, this whole election was fraudulently done because people within the city limits of Oregon City who are not on CRW got to vote, and those who have CRW didn't get to vote. So I just thought I'd tell you about that. It was really confusing today to hear all that.
I don't know if John Lewis can speak to any of that or not.
Well,
It wasn't your fault for me to hear.
I can tell you that this came up at our department head meeting yesterday as an issue. I actually received a ballot myself, and I live out in South End in the city limits, so I guess I get to vote on the recall on CRW. The boundary issues are interesting in that the city's expanded, and the way I understand it is it used to be when there was a boundary commission, Oregon Boundary Commission, that they would then clean up all the other boundary issues that went along with that annexation. But the Boundary Commission no longer exists, and I think CRW has never withdrawn its boundary from the city. They've recently talked to us about wanting to do that, but it would have been that CRW could have put a little more effort into determining where their actual boundary is, rather than just rely. I think either they relied on a map. I don't know the details, whether it was the county's map or CRW's map. But yes, it sounds like many Oregon City customers receive ballots on, and they're not in the district. So it's unfortunate. It impressed upon me that we probably need to help CRW through their boundary changes, but still, it's an unfortunate mistake.
Yeah.
My being here tonight wasn't a complaint as much as the confusion over this, because, again, after reading the papers, you know that as litigious as Ms. Holloway is, I bet you she'll say this whole election was fraudulently done because not everyone followed the rules and people who voted. And as I said, I didn't want Sherry Hall to get another black eye because it seemed like it was out of her control, just like it's out of yours. But it's too bad that if we are on CRW rates, we can't vote for the people who actually set our rates. And I don't know if there's a way around that in the future, but
maybe you could try going to their board.
I want to sit on another board.
Nobody wants to go to a CRW board meeting.
But you should go and make your point to them. I mean, that is their issue. They should be tracking their boundaries a little better.
It should be, but they said something to me, the CFO this morning, well, you have been annexed into Oregon City, your areas. But again, like Barlow Crest, Trailview, we're in Oregon City limits, but we're still on their water, so we may be a part of Oregon City, but you'd think we'd be a part of their district.
One thing I've asked for, and I think we're making progress, is to actually separate those things out of the utility bill. Yeah. So people, number one, know that part of their wastewater is actually county, part of it's city, part of the water services offered are the city's responsibilities. Part of them are South Forks, which is both owned by Westland and Oregon City, and maybe in that process we'll be able to split out those that are CRW in the utility bill split out, because I think a lot of people don't realize that some of the services they're paying on the utility bill aren't city services. So I know our city manager is looking at that now to make out those split outs on the utility bill.
And one more comment. We're actually just putting the charter amendment forward this time. We're not doing a rate increase.
Right, I knew that.
So
but
we expect your lawn to be green.
Well, would no. Mine's always green. The moles do that
Sorry.
for me. But
Had to go there, Tom.
the
Sorry.
whole idea on that was the fact that rates are going to be 3% increased over since '94. I think that's part of the plan. I was explaining how it worked to our citizens up there. Okay, thank you.
But believe it or not, Clackamas River is challenged in terms of the water it can ultimately supply the various water users, and conservation is going to be part of the solution. And I suggest you plant lots of perennials in your yard and don't water it.
That's right. Thank you very much.
With that, Michael Berman and William Gifford, please come forward. Michael?
Good evening. Michael Berman, Oregon City resident in the Kenema neighborhood. We went, the other night, we had a CIC meeting, and at the CIC meeting, we were made aware there's it's a yellow flashing light that the city is going to try out. And it's I believe it's approximately a $20,000 light fixture. I believe in the safety of it. The location, I kind of question the location, and if it is the right place, then it is. But I think that if I'm correct, it's only a block away from a traffic signal with a crosswalk. And so there seems to be some redundancy to have an experiment or a trial it's a great idea. I think they're wonderful lights. I've seen them before. And what happens? It slows. It's not a light, but it's a cautionary light to draw attention that people are prepared to cross a sidewalk or crosswalk. And I believe that it is at the corner where the Carnegie Library would be on Molalla, which is just a block or so up from a real traffic light with a real stoplight. And I was curious that maybe there might be other locations that are farther from traffic lights. I know that, for instance, in Kenema, to cross through, there's not as much neighborhoods there. I'm not saying that's the right place, but that's an example where most of the neighbors are on one side of 99, and the bike path is on the other side of 99. And it's sort of a situation like similar to Linton, Oregon, and Linton's had significant changes in the way traffic flows through its city after a child was killed. And so I just wanted to bring that up as a question. And then I also kind of want to touch on something that I've been trying to work with ODOT and mention it at our CIC meetings, but I want to mention it here because I live in Kenema on 99 and I have a business on 99, so it factors in my life a lot. And when you travel down 99, there is a posted 25-mile-an-hour speed limit through the tunnel, and that continues around the bend past the Larry Morton's transmission. And traffic calming is something that ODOT's driven by commerce. They want cars to move efficiently, and they don't like their roads slowed down. But it comes through our city, and I think that we deserve to have the respect of ODOT to have our traffic slowed there. And I've asked for the feasibility of putting the flashing radar that says what's like on Lynn Avenue that would say 25 miles an hour, your speed 55 right now. And typically the cars do that. Also, maybe a chance to have the very soft speed bumps on Railroad Avenue. Cars now go through Railroad very quickly to get to the bridge. But the bridge opens to become kind of an express again, and cars do not ever travel the right speed limit through the railroad. And since it is a one-way, maybe those very gradual speed bumps that you see, I know on Williams Avenue in Portland, by Emmanuel Hospital, they have those, and that's a very busy street, and they do use those. I've seen cars hit 503 coming through the tunnel. They came fast enough that they collided with the building. Nobody was standing there at the time. They have collided with the back of my neighbor across the street and caused a natural gas fire. I've seen cars go race the yellow down Main Street fast enough. A little car went around the corner and lost its tire on the railroad tracks. And I couldn't stop smiling when he got out of his car. And so it's a concern of mine, and it's driven by safety, and it's also driven, I think, by commerce. That's the gateway to our city. And it's very difficult for somebody to even look right and think about traveling into Oregon City from Canby with a semi or a UPS or a big truck barreling down on them. And you're trying to go a traveler may be trying to go 25 miles an hour, and the car behind them doesn't feel like that's the right speed. Part of it's education, I think. I know that I see that flashing light on Lynn Avenue. I don't think of myself as a speeder, but I'm reminded that sometimes I might be going faster than I should be down that hill. So those are the only two things I really had to talk about today. I did want to say also, this is kind of a stretch. There's a World War II PT boat that was restored, and they're looking for a home on the Willamette River. And it's just out there. It might be something that the city might look at to offer a home for that as one other attraction that we could have on Main Street or downtown. And the last agenda is, if you look in Willamette Week, Mitzel Restaurant, it was mentioned in top restaurants for cheap eats and good cheap eats. So that was kind of nice that it's an Oregon City restaurant that was included in Portland's best restaurants. So.
Great, thank you. Mr. Gifford.
Yeah, my name is William Gifford, and I live in Oregon City. And wow, thanks for that information, Mike. I want to build on his idea of slowing down that traffic. I just think it's the right thing to do. The idea about the yellow crossing signal, at first I was all in agreement with him. Why would you have it right next to a signalized intersection? And then I thought, wow, a better place would be up on Barkley Hills, where Barkley Hills has got that. I mean, it's so dark up there,
Yes.
you know. But then I realized, that's just a block away from a signalized intersection too. So wherever it's going to go, I hope that it works. The other reason the main reason that I got up here, I didn't realize that Mike Mitchell was going to be talking about the dog park. But I'd like to make a comment that last weekend, my wife and I had some business to attend to in Vancouver, Washington, and so we actually left Oregon City, which is a big deal for us, and crossed the river. And while we were up there, we had taken our dog with us, and he's a big dog, and we knew we needed to run, so we just went on Google and said, where's a dog park in Vancouver? We found the most wonderful dog park, and here's what impressed me. Number one, you can find it easily on Google, but it was the biggest. I'll give you the big one first. It was located underneath some power lines, in power line right-of-way. I just thought that was really significant. You can't ever build under there. It's virtually worthless property anyway. They had very nice, not very high, like 4-foot fences, and they had a double entry thing where you go through one gate. You go through and you go.
Now, wires are high up there, so it's not going to short-circuit anything.
Exactly. They're not going to short-circuit anything. You can't use that property for anything else. And they had nice little stations in there where people would donate plastic bags, and people, you're required. No choke chains were allowed. I thought that there were a lot of really nice amenities to that. But the biggest part of all of it was, and then they had a section where they had to be on leash, but the majority of it, by far and away, the majority of it was off-leash, no dog fights. Probably 100 dogs out there. It was just wonderful. My dog just thought he was died and gone to heaven. But most significantly was the acquisition of the property, or maybe some sort of just an arrangement for that right of way. But I thought it was a great idea. And you know where I'm thinking? Right behind Joanne's, up there.
That's been offered
Yeah. It's been offered by
the people that own it, the nursing home that owns it.
Anyway.
As entertainment for the people that live there.
Well, I just think, getting a dog park would be a great thing for Oregon City to have.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank
and
you.
Marjorie Hughes.
Good evening. I'm Margie Hughes, and I live in Oregon City. Two things, because the one thing I wasn't going to talk about, but it got brought up, and that is the ballots for Clackamas River water. And my husband and I both got them, and I was at elections because I'm working on a special project with Sherry. We live on Marysville Lane. We don't live in an outlining area that got annexed in. We live in the heart of Oregon City. So so we are challenging. And there's about 8 of us that have been, that got them, that are actually never have been in Clackamas River water and have no idea. But they took Steve in elections, used me, and went all the way through all of the county and everything, and back to them. And we are in their district, regardless. So that is being worked on, because that does need to be corrected. The outlining areas may be a different story, but we actually live in, and we didn't know we were, but we voted on their budget and everything in the last elections because it's on our ballot. But the other thing is that I have a client who has 2.5 acres in Oregon City that is green space. It's treed It's up on the hill, about 3 blocks or 4 blocks from the Willamette Falls Providence Hospital. He would like, originally they were going to build on it. They can't. It's at a dead-end street that has been stopped before their property. He would like to, and I've been trying to talk to McLaughlin Neighborhood Association about a park or green space, but that might be another idea for a dog park. It's adjacent to the green spaces that go down over the hill. He would just like to get out of it what he's had to pay for it, so it's less than $50,000 for 2+ acres. So I just thought I'd bring it up, and maybe I'll talk to the gentleman that's from the Parks Committee and see if we can't work out something.
He's still here, so, yeah, good. With that, that's the end of the citizens' comment. Adoption of the agenda, I believe we're going to pull an item or two.
6E?
6, we're just taking a look at it. 6E will be pulled. Was there anything else associated with 6E?
No. I don't think so.
I don't think so. With that, we'll go on to general business. And Resolution 1304, granting renewal of franchise agreement of Portland General Electric Company to provide electric, light, and power service within the city.
Thank you. Nancy has an update for you.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I think it's franchise agreement night.
Yes.
We have 2 of them on our agenda this evening. And this is the first. I'm happy to be presenting you tonight with the proposed franchise agreement for with Portland General Electric Company. As you know, back in 1993, the City Commission granted a 20-year franchise to PGE to construct and maintain their electric, light, and power system within our right-of-way. Well, the 20 years has now passed, and the staff and PGE have been negotiating to renew the new franchise agreement. We met several times throughout 2012 and have finally reached a tentative agreement on a revised and updated franchise. The 20-year agreement that we've had with them, the relationship has been one of mutual respect and trust. As an example, when the calculation of the franchise fee to be paid by PGE provided a greater payment to the city via the gross revenue method or the volumetric method, PGE worked diligently with the city to change the method by ordinance and resulting in a greater payment to Oregon City. So they've been real upfront and helpful in that area. And also the mutual respect continued during the various construction projects that when the city required PGE to move their facilities in our right-of-way. The communication between the 2 agencies was effective and proper notice was given and to PGE to require the least amount of relocation costs for the company. The 2 parties entered into these negotiations with a spirit of cooperation, and you have before you the final proposed agreement. The staff report notes a few of the notable type changes that have been made. The fee itself will remain the same. It's a statute-driven amount, so we aren't changing that, and it's paid on an annual basis. So with that, I'm here to answer any questions you might have, and I see Annette Matson with PGE in our audience today, and I'm sure that she would be able to answer questions as well as our city attorney, if you have any. Or if not, motion is welcome too.
It's taken a while. I know we extended the previous franchise agreement to go through this negotiation phase, and I'm glad it's all worked out. I presume to everybody's relative satisfaction. If there are no comments, I presume we could just go ahead and operate on the motion. Is there anything either our attorney or the city manager wants to offer? Okay. Do you want to say anything at all, Matt?
Yeah, I would like to.
Okay. you might introduce yourself. I think a lot of people here know you.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, members of the commission, my name is Annette Matson. I work for Portland General Electric. And I really just want to say thank you to the commission and to the city staff for the opportunity to work on this agreement. We've had a working relationship with Oregon City since 1889. And I think that we have both benefited greatly from that. I just want to recognize your staff. You know, we had some transitions during our negotiations. Dave Wimmer retired. Nancy Crusher moved on to Wilsonville. We brought in Wyatt and John, who continued their great work. And, of course, Dave Frazier was in and out of meetings, always keeping track of the work that was going on throughout the process. And Nancy Ide, who was the consistent person keeping everybody on track, everything organized throughout the process, and her support was exemplary. So, again, just we had some great discussions, we had some tough discussions, we had some constructive talks, and we really look forward to our working relationship over the next 10 years. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, do I hear a motion to approve the resolution 1304?
I move to approve.
Carol Foley and Betty Mum seconds. Okay, vote, please. I'll wait for a screen to change so we can vote. I think this still takes longer than a voice vote. Anyway, unanimous vote in favor.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank
Annette,
you.
just a moment.
Thank you.
Annette, you have been a great partner to work with and will continue to be, and we look very anxiously as we move ahead on a master planning for the Blue Heron site to have you as a partner in that process too.
Yes, I was very happy to see that on the agenda as the next item, and I'm looking forward to sticking around to learn about more about that. We're looking forward to participating in that also. Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, we go into our collaborative planning agreement between the city and Peter McKendrick, the trustee, who's a trustee of the Blue Heron Paper Company. And is it going to be David reporting?
No, Tony Conkle has it.
It'll be Tony Conkle reporting.
Thank you, Mayor. Evening, Commissioners. We first brought this proposed collaborative planning agreement between the City of Oregon City and Peter McKittrick, the bankruptcy trustee for the Blue Heron property, to the Commission at their meeting on February 20th. They asked for additional information referring to exhibits that were referenced in the general exhibit that was attached to the agreement. Staff has provided the updated collaborative planning agreement, which lays out the responsibilities of the bankruptcy trustee as well as the city as we move forward with a potential master planning and entitlement process for the Blue Heron property. Nothing in the agreement has changed from your previous review of it other than references to the exhibits. We've included the proposed request for proposal that'll be mailed out, as well as all of the background data that was performed over the summer as part of the due diligence work with our partners, investigating the site for as part of that due diligence process. So you have the complete record of information that's been produced, excluding some demolition costs that were kept back as part of property negotiation by Metro. To summarize again, the collaborative planning agreement, the main parts of it is that the bankruptcy trustee agrees to bring $50,000 to the planning process, that the bankruptcy trustee agrees to not abandon the property unless forced to and directed to by the bankruptcy court until April of 2014, and that he agrees to sign the land use application for the master plan and entitlement process amendments. The bankruptcy trustee also lays out that they're entitled to be a part of the consultant review and selection committee. It agrees that all correspondence between the consultants, which the city will be managing, will be provided to them, that they're open and available to participate in this process throughout the whole process, which we hope that they will actively do. The city also takes on the responsibility of bringing a minimum of $400,000 to this planning process through our other partners, including Clackamas County and a construction excise tax grant with Metro, which are still in process of being approved. and that we would take over and manage all responsibilities for the master planning and entitlement work. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
From the commission, we've got some people who want to speak on the floor, but anybody that's on the commission would be a priority.
I think I'd like to hear from the citizens first.
I've got a couple of questions before we do that. I think it'd be nice to perhaps have what the role of the Metro Regional Government has been in the basic findings of the due diligence, those pieces that we've actually gone through at this point. If you could just take a few moments to summarize that for us all.
We've been working since the property filed for bankruptcy in February of 2011, at which point there was concern about what's going to happen with the property. As many commissioners who recall from conversations we've previously had, we have in our comprehensive plan amendment a requirement that if there's any significant change on this property, that they need to go through a master plan process. But other than that, we had very limited base information about the property itself, topography, buildings, anything on the site. So we formed a partnership with Metro to look at and begin a due diligence review of the property for potential acquisition opportunities. That due diligence work focused on, and in forming that partnership, we identified 4 values which were the guiding principles that this commission, Metro, Clackamas County, that we've all agreed to and that we've been utilizing in our decision making and moving forward with the due diligence work. And that includes public access, environmental restoration, economic reinvestment into the site, and cultural and historical interpretation. And we don't see those as one outranking the other. We see them more as a circle where if you do one well, it supports the other 3. If you do 2 well, they support the other 2. You create a robust and active public access. It only encourages the economic development and investment in that property. And with that, we started the due diligence report to try to understand if we were able to put together a larger partnership that could take down this property, what would be the costs associated with that to determine if this was a wise investment of taxpayer and public dollars. And we focused on understanding of the historical and cultural resources available that exist on the site, stormwater, environmental, what the environmental conditions are on the site, demolition and holding costs, and reuse potential on the site, and those were the factors that we looked at. And through this due diligence work that we did, we essentially focused on what we consider the main street level, everything that you can see above ground, realizing that there are significant acreage that's old pilings, foundations, and underground tail races that exist under there. But we were focusing on what do you do with the 550,000 roughly square feet of building structures, lean-tos that are above the ground, and what are they made of? Are they significant? Are they not? Are there environmental hazards associated with that? What do you do with the boilers that are on the site? And so we worked through all of that in trying to get an understanding of what the site is. And that's what the due diligence work that Metro and the city invested in over the summer. And coming to the end of that, the goal was to create a larger partnership with the state or other agencies to look at purchasing that property. We're not able to do that. We also realize that there's not a lot of push for private buyer coming in right at the moment. There are quite a few unknowns that are making investment into that by the private side solely difficult. So the next phase we felt at that point was to engage the trustee to try and deal and address some of the unknowns that exist on the site through a public visioning master planning process to come up with a framework plan and to see if we could get the entitlements put into the place onto the property to help move this property to that point where private investment would be able to come in. It's kind of a very high level now description of what we've been working on that property.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions at this point from the commission? No. Hearing none. Paul Edgar and Jerry Herman, please come forward. You're not Jerry Herman, but are you? I know, but I'm. I presume I'm sure you got clearance. That's Brian Boyce. Go ahead, Jim.
Okay.
Paul's first.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
As I called them, is the order you speak in.
Paul Edgar, Oregon City and Kenema. I'm also the land use chair of the Citizens Involvement Council. And I would like to bring to a point that here's an agreement that we're entering into or starting or examining at this point. And it never ever came before the Citizens Involvement Council. I think that's a great error in the process. And even part of this is the land use chair of the Kenema Neighborhood Association. Part of this area actually is part of the Kenema Neighborhood Association because the boundary goes right through part of the Blue Heron site. David Perdue might have brought up that there is a question about citizens' involvement, or how do we get it involved? Are we going to be part of the process or the team, or are we not? As you put together a group to perform a concept plan on the property, right now it appears that most of the active citizens or groups are not even included. We're not part of the process, and I think that's a gross error. I think, and I would like to make a recommendation to you that some of us who have deep roots in historic preservation, I'm one of those people because I'm in the historic district, the registered historic district of Kenema. We study this. We think about it. I'm concerned about the buildings that are on the property too. Which buildings should be saved or should they be nominated as historic structures? Right now, virtually nothing is. And the code and the way which way the state handles it, it makes it very difficult. But we have a tremendous obligation, and some of us who have real passion to be part of and helping making sure that we come out of this the best way we can. I would hope that you allow us to be included, not in the back seat, but in the front seat of the bus. Thank you.
I want to clarify something at the very beginning here.
Okay.
We don't own this property.
Yeah.
It is under a trusteeship, and we have to work out an agreement to work with a trustee at this point. And I'm going to let Tony respond because you're acting like we have control over this property. We do not have control over this property.
Nope.
The master planning process is one that's going to be a public input process, and at that point, we're going to be able to have that discussion. But we have to have an agreement with the trustee before we can do anything because we don't even own it. And I'll let Tony Kunkel say something if he wants to.
We're trying to just put together a partnership that brings money so that we can do the public master planning process, which is heavily includes extensive funding for the public outreach, robust public outreach. That's what we've talked about all along.
Yep.
Was to do that process. It's also, I think, one thing when I was talking about the three things that, in general, what the trustee, he agrees to a lot here in this agreement. And one of those is that while this property is in bankruptcy, the local jurisdiction cannot go in and change any zoning designation on the property. So we need his cooperation in order to do any of the entitlement changes on that property. So we see this as an opportunity to engage the trustee as well as the community early in this process to try and get a framework and a vision for what we want. This is going to be a very high-level framework plan that we can build on and get more specific as we move through this process. I also think it's important to note that while the trustee is only bringing $50,000 in cash to the property, he's potentially, NRI is on the site right now and doing the demolition work and the salvage work. Their contract runs in October, I believe, of this year. Right now, NRI is responsible for maintaining all the costs associated with that property. Security, bills, leaks, vandalism, anything that occurs on that property. Once they leave the property, the bankruptcy trustee takes over those bills unless he's able to find someone else to pay for that. So essentially, the bankruptcy trustee, which is very unique, has agreed to hold the property until April and pay those bills, which is potentially, anywhere from $150,000 to $250,000 that he would be paying in addition to that, so that we can get through this process. So I understand Mr. Edgar's concern, and it is certainly our intent, and I believe we've tried to convey that as best we can while trying to get an understanding during the due diligence process that any master planning on this property, if we can negotiate the trustee to allow us to do that, we would be public, and it would be open, and it would be engaging the community. This site is significant for Oregon City, Clackamas County, the state of Oregon, and many people's opinion, the country. From what has happened here historically, the amazing resource of Willamette Falls and over a half mile of Willamette riverfront, this is very significant, and the public engagement is number one.
Tony, can I ask a question? Will the public process be involved from even the selection of who's going to lead the visioning?
In terms of the selection of the consultant,
Right.
We've identified, for example, planning commission members, Portland General Electric. We don't typically open this up to a large public input into the selection of our consultant work.
I would maybe suggest that you do that in this case. This is really, really big. And I know it could be a can of worms, but given the scope of the project, I think the more public input, the earlier, the better.
I would agree with that, except for I would like to get this done. So can we identify certain CIC members or certain Kenema members? So it's kind of more getting them in place.
Well, I would agree. We could do something like that, or put a very short timeline on people wanting to join the process.
Yes.
Like 3 weeks,
Yes.
that kind of thing.
So how is that? Oh, I have a question.
Go ahead.
How would that work then, as far as them, interviewing the consultant firm, seeing all the resumes? That's an in-depth process.
Well, it's just an RFP. So if you're used to looking at RFPs,
But do you think a lot of people are used to looking at RFPs? I mean, I'm just posing a question.
In the agreement, I'd also point out that we're taking the lead on the master planning process, which means the city and the trustee need to agree on a consultant.
Yeah.
This isn't historically when we've done concept plans, they've been over 400 acres, multiple properties. We are negotiating with essentially a representative of a private property, so they do, in the agreement, the trustee needs to agree to the consultant. So we're trying to balance public involvement, public input into this process with someone representing a property right.
My guess is an RFP is going to address public processes too. Is that right?
Yes, definitely, yes.
And,
Mike, can I tell you my concern?
Okay.
That we work from a specific list, and that the list is predetermined in a way. I don't know how many people are on the list. I have no idea who's on the list. But that we tend to use the same people over and over again. And my idea is just if we bring the public into the whole process, it's not hard to read an RFP. It's not rocket science. And I think it could be done very quickly if that's something we wanted to expedite. So that's my reasoning.
I don't know. I have to think about that.
Did I stump you?
Well, no, you don't stop. I don't. This process is not a public involvement process. You're looking to select a consultant. I don't. the RFPs, I guess, would be open to anybody who wanted to submit an RFP. Is that right?
Right.
I mean,
Right.
so I'm not sure what's gained by having. If we could identify a representative or two, but I don't know what the process is going to be. What I'm afraid might happen is you might bring in somebody who wants to start micromanaging the process right from the get-go, and we don't need that at this stage in the game. We're too early in the game to know what the real process is going to be.
Mayor, part of the reason we're hiring our consultant is to have them. We're looking at a regional public involvement. I mean, that's why this thing is $400,000, $500,000. That's a lot for 23 acres of planning. That's a lot of money, and that is there because there's going to be extensive public outreach, and we don't know what the design's going to look like. We're not pretending that we should design it. What we're trying to do is find a consultant that will then say, these are a couple of different approaches you could take to public involvement and how extensive it would be, and then the steering committee typically gets formed after the consultant is selected. But it sounds like the idea is to form a steering committee to pick the consultant even, which would be unconventional, I think, but,
I don't think it's all that unconventional. I don't think it's usual, but I just
That's
think
what I
that
mean.
the scope of this project is such that we need to look at it in a different perspective.
I have no objection to any of it, however you want to do it.
Do you have a specific recommendation of how to choose an individual to serve on it? We could have it. I mean, we could have it done by a representative of given groups, I presume.
We could do it by neighborhoods. We could do.
Well, the thing is, do you want 11 neighborhood associations? 12 neighborhood associations. Shame on you. 12 neighborhood associations. I don't think, in terms of choosing a consultant, we want representatives from 12 neighborhood associations. I mean, we've got professionals that are going to deal with it. I don't mind having a individual that is selected perhaps from the CIC to represent it, perhaps one from the chamber. You haven't mentioned that, but I don't want to swamp ourselves with a bunch of reviewers. That's not the process that I think is going to get us anywhere. So if you can give just maybe specific recommendations of who might be there, that'd be one thing. Maybe somebody representing the Main Street in some way.
Would the CIC be appropriate?
Well, I said
Well,
somebody from the CIC.
One person from the CIC, one person from Main Street, one person from.
CIC.
Well,
I already said that.
I'd have trouble involving Main Street if you didn't involve other neighborhoods.
Well, CIC. Well, Main Street's right adjacent to the property, and if
Right,
you
but
wanted
so
to-
is McLaughlin, so is Kanema, so is.
Yeah. Well, then I would say CIC.
Well, can we just hear from somebody else?
That bears on this, there has just been formed an actual neighborhood association for the territory covered by CIC. It's actually the overarching group that all the neighborhood associations send people to, and there's never been before now. It hasn't been approved, but it's been handed into city staff. So that group will be in place soon.
So I would suggest a representative from CIC,
Yeah.
and a representative maybe from the chamber to represent the business.
Yeah.
This group is going to be called Two Rivers Neighborhood Association.
Oh, so are you saying the CIC or the
CIC.
CIC?
I would just say the CIC
Yeah,
can make the
CIC is the whole
recommendation.
thing. Right.
If it's for somebody from the Two Rivers, that's fine.
Right.
What is the Two Rivers?
It's
It's a matter that was in my
It's an actual neighborhood
reports.
association for the property that runs from the Blue Heron up to the South Fork Water Plant, to the city limits.
Okay.
Commissioners, I have a letter from them that
I
I
have
was...
been elected chair, so, just so you know.
I have a letter from them here that I was going to share with you under my reports. But
Okay.
I don't know if I need to do that now.
Well, first of all, I guess we're right at the moment.
CIC
right-
and Chamber.
Right at the moment, we're trying to establish a collaborative planning agreement, and I presume we're going to have a little bit of time to identify some representatives that could review the RFP. I have no objections to having 2 or 3 individuals from 2 or 3 distinct groups doing so. But if we get more than that, then I hope they are people that are familiar with reviewing RFPs, too. That would be beneficial. And I don't want them to get in a dialogue of what's going to happen at Blue Heron at this point. I mean, that's going to be a disaster. When we don't even have anybody we're going to be able to work with on it. So I don't want to bog down this process. I think we can continue this on, but what I'm going to suggest is we take the other testimony.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are you speaking
We're gonna
separately
be
from
careful.
yourself and separately for Jerry Herman? You need 6 minutes?
Yes,
Okay.
I get a whole
You
6
get
minutes.
3 minutes for Jerry Herman's presentation.
Okay, so imagine I have less hair and it's much lighter. And I'll just read what Jerry has here, since that was called up first. This letter is written in regards to historic attributes of the Blue Heron site that may have not come to your attention. Apparently, there is interest in preserving components of the mill site when possible. I would encourage you to do so. Besides Station A electric plant, the Jacobs Woolen Mill, the 1930s era sluiceways built by McLaughlin, the old saw and grist mills, some of which still have remnants there at the site. There's more. There's the work of Tom McCall and his team that made this mill the most advanced in recycling technologies in the world in the 60s and 70s and even later. McCall was leading the effort to save the Willamette River and restore it. Pulp and paper mills were major contributors to pollution, as were all the cities along the Willamette Valley. Food processors and also the in-water storage of logs rounded out the problem, and McCall said that the river was a river of death for its wildlife, like fish and so on. He and his first appointed Environmental Quality Commission Director, L.B. Day, who, even though being an astute attorney, walked everywhere in cleated shoes, made the Oregon City mill site the target of getting one member of industry to commit to changing ways. L.B. Day and the governor could be here clomping down the passages of the mill and administrative offices to reach agreements with mill officials on how they might show off their industry as a partner in cleaning up the river. This is back in the 60s and 70s. And they often interface with public affairs and then environmental manager Peter Schnell, uncle of our own Shaw Spady. McCall and Day were very demanding of the Oregon City mill. The results of all this should impress a city of firsts, which Oregon City is. The first ever application of pollution abatement funds and energy tax credits to any entity in our nation was at that plant. First in the first west of the Mississippi to begin recycling old newspapers. There was one mill east of the Mississippi that started it first. And the first ever movement away from the chemical bleaching process to polishing and brightening of fiber to make paper white. And first ever in the world recovery of magazine stock and integration of such with old newspapers. And first ever in the world recovery of 10,000 tons of phone books and integration of that also into paper production. And so this is a place where a lot of firsts happen, and that should be part of this whole thing. And so he finishes by saying, I hope you will consider these factors in approaching mill redevelopment. Technology and facility elements where these pioneering efforts first took place still exist and can be exhibited. And the cleated footsteps of L.B. Day and his boss Tom McCall can still be heard in that facility. So I have copies of his pages.
Jerry Herman, you've done the best job I've ever heard to confine your time. You went over a little over 3 minutes with Jerry. That's not usually the case. Brian Boyce.
I have probably briefer, so I'm encouraging you to proceed with this. I think as long as the spirit of cooperation with all the people that need to be involved in this, it's not just a city thing, are included, this could be a wonderful project. The main benefits of it will fall on Oregon City. And I'm jealous of anyone that owns businesses anywhere near that. They're going to be doing very well in a few years if this gets done. And
maybe more than a few years.
What?
Maybe more than a few years.
It could be a long time. We don't know. It's years, though. We know that. Anyway, So I see it as a potentially very positive thing. There's a lot to be preserved there. It's astounding what is in that plant. Tony Conkle was kind enough to give us a tour earlier this summer, and so I'm astounded what's down there, and it's all history, all over the place down there. So anyway, so I'm here to encourage you to proceed with this, and I did look at the Metro document and the actual agreement, and I apologize for not reading the whole thing, but I don't think I'm alone in that problem. But the Metro study is actually pretty well and does mention the historical value of that spot and the potential of that spot. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Byron. Michael Berman and James Nicita.
I'm sorry, Mayor, if I could just real quick.
Go ahead.
You know, we're obviously working on this, and as part of the interview, we had 2 representatives from our partners as part of the interview who would do the scoring as well as the interviews. That include Metro, Clackamas County, State of Oregon, Oregon City, and the trustee. We also identified PGE for obvious reasons, being a stakeholder property owner directly adjacent, and we've had great working relationships with them. Port of Portland, we've worked with the Port of Portland. They have extensive experience in dealing with industrial brownfields redevelopment options. They've been a great resource for us as we've been working through this process. Now, the Willamette Falls Heritage Area Coalition, they've done a lot of work of already bringing together multiple interest groups into this area, so we see them as a great resource to utilize. They've got a very diverse group that's been put together already, and they've made a lot of these connections, so we see them as a valuable resource, and we would be requesting them. And this.
Are you talking about scoring the RFP?
And being part of the process.
Okay.
Yes, this was the list that we were working off of. Okay. Main Street property owner, or Main Street downtown group, preservation advocate, and a Habitat River advocate. So each of our partners are working on putting together this RFP. We also mentioned a planning commission member and a citizen at large. We also want to let you know, we're balancing, as I stated earlier, multiple objectives here. And one real, it's a constraint that we're trying to work within, is a time constraint. How to do a robust public process within a window that we have here, an opportunity that we have, dealing with the trustee and while they have ownership of the property. Assuming that this is approved tonight, we would be releasing the RFP tomorrow, looking for sealed bids to be turned in by April 15th, immediately scoring them to make sure minimum qualifications are met by internal staff, and then the group that we identify would have 1 week, roughly 8 days, to review and score. On that 9th day, so essentially we're at April 25th, April 25th and 26th, we have 2 days, full days dedicated for interviews of that process, with a hopeful announcement by May 1st. It is an aggressive timeline, and we realize that, but we're trying to meet, as I stated, multiple objectives and constraints, and an opportunity here. And so I just want everyone to be aware. We have thought about how do we do this, and how do we score this, and how do we move that forward. And we believe we've brought the expertise and the partners that we have to bring along through this whole process in this table, where this is happening in Oregon City. We have the land use regulations. We review the master plan. We have the land use authority. But we're trying to create a coalition here, because this is much, much larger than Oregon City in terms of not only the impact, but what the investment it's going to take in this property to have it redeveloped. So just a little bit of background. It wasn't in any of your material. This is stuff that staff works on as your professionals in running an RFP process to hire a consultant.
Michael Berman and James Nicita, please. In that order.
This is not an artist rendering. This is a picture of Oregon City, probably about just before the Depression, maybe, right around the Arch Bridge is built. You can see the extent of the development where the mill is. The mill is not a monolithic structure. It's a city. You can see 4th Street, you can see 3rd Street.
Michael?
Oh, Mike.
And so I think it's imperative to see that. I couldn't have spoken as eloquently as Brian Boyce did in the representing Jerry Herman. I can only reiterate everything that he has said. Thanks. The paper mill is close to my heart. I live in Kanima again, right across from the mill, basically. My business is right across the street from it. My dad worked in the mill for 42 years. The amount of pride that I have in the mill is not an eyesore to me. The paper mill at one time brought over $500,000 in taxes to the city.
It did.
It brought $75 million into the economy. The impact of having 100+ women and men and college students coming off duty every 8 hours to our city was phenomenal. That scale is something. That scale of economics is something that needs to be considered ultimately all the time, and having a balance of that. I take. I think that the sense of urgency that is often expressed in these meetings sometimes seems to be created oftentimes, and you learn about senses of creating sense of urgencies in sales trainings. So I take that with a grain of salt. I also would like to say that we don't own that property. But I can also tell you right now, currently state law doesn't allow us to preserve the buildings. I take umbrage with part of the plan that was spoken of cultural and historic interpretation. Static displays of photos of buildings that are currently standing are different than historic preservation, and that's a very important difference in the verbiage. I'm listening to the comments and the roundabout in here really makes me very nervous. I feel like this is something that's almost over everybody's head in this room, frankly. And I do believe that if the City Commission were to ask the legislature, I feel very strongly about this, that the current law can be changed. I can assure you that the legislature's ears are open right now. And I would suggest that perhaps, I don't know that it would be appropriate to take a vote to ask legislature to do that at this point, but I assure you that the ears are open in the legislature, and that you don't own that property. I don't own that property, but it is a part of Oregon City. It's within our city, and that creates a different situation. I also say that of everything that we spoke about with the Heritage Group, I'm familiar with some of the groups that are involved with that. I'm part of Willamette River Keepers. Those people do not live in Kanima. They do not live in McLaughlin. They do not live in the Two Rivers neighborhood. We do. And I think that of all the groups, that the people that really live here, work here, and raise their children here, should have the most say in it, because those children are going to be living in the city that we are creating right now.
All of our city needs to be involved in this.
James,
All of our children.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of points. First, to thank you to the Commission and staff for listening to concerns at the last meeting regarding the packet, and in particular the concern regarding presupposing a zoning. I looked at the packet, and while my preference would be still that no zoning be even mentioned and presupposed before a planning process, I am appreciative of the language that now indicates that other zoning models besides MUD could be considered as a result of a public planning process. And kudos and thank you on that. That's very significant progress, personally, in my mind at least. James Nacito, Oregon City, by the way. I'm sorry. So, having said that, I really do have some really grave concerns about another matter that I raised last time, which was again, how did historic preservation just fall off the table? When you look at these documents, I think Mr. Berman mentioned this. I looked at the site assessment and building evaluation report about and Mr. Conkle mentioned it too. The 4 partner values includes cultural interpretation and references historic interpretation, but not preservation. What was the public planning process that established those 4 partner values? I don't think there was one. If someone can identify that, how did that happen? What process led to these 4 specific values? Who established them? Was there any public hearing about that where the public helped establish those 4 values that seem to be driving all of this? I don't recall anything like that. If someone could explain that, I'd appreciate it. Having said that, I'd really like to ask the Commission to re-establish historic preservation as a really top priority, if not the top priority. And on that, I want to address some comments the Mayor made at the beginning. Mr. Mayor, I'll remind the Commission that back in 2011, the Commission actually sent a letter to the trustee reminding the trustee of his Section 106 responsibilities under the National Historic Preservation Act. So at one time, the Commission had that value. I also recall the Commission had a legal memo, and this goes directly to your comment, Mr. Mayor. The Commission had a legal memo prepared by a special attorney, I think his name was Mr. Barroway, on the automatic stay and our ability to regulate, even though there's the automatic stay. I can't remember if it was privileged or not. My recollection was he said, yeah, you can file a motion to do that. There was no 100% guarantee that the judge would grant that, but you could file a motion for a relief from stay to regulate, to zone like you zone and regulate any other property in Oregon City. So including historic zoning or whatever. So that's possible. What it really takes is leadership. And to me as a citizen, I ask you as the Commission to take that leadership and do what it takes, what's possible to make preservation and have some teeth. Mr. Berman, and I think Mr. Edgar too, mentioned the state law. I think they're referring to the law that talks about needing owner consent to designate local historic districts. And you need property owner consent, so that would be an inhibition or a prohibition on us doing that now, but the legislature's in session. The legislature's in session now. Finally, Mr. Mayor, may I ask for an extra minute? Okay, thank you.
We've granted that to more than one person.
On the agreement, I had an idea I just wanted to throw out on negotiating with the trustee. He's salvaging. You don't know what he's going to salvage and if he's going to start tearing away at buildings that are eligible for National Register status. Could you negotiate with the trustee to do something like a mitigation strategy where he focuses, he prioritizes on salvaging stuff we don't care about and would like to see go? Like in the grid system, over the years, a bunch of junky kind of metal structures have been built right in the right-of-ways of 2nd, 3rd, and 4th Street. If the trustee salvaged those, that would like reveal the historic grid of Oregon City. And when you look at these historic photographs in the packet, you see you can conceptualize when we restore the grids by getting rid of this junk. There's a city there. And these old historic buildings fill out the building walls of the old historic city, and it's really cool. So why not negotiate with a trustee before you cement this? I think that he wouldn't care about that. I don't think. I mean, you don't know until you ask. But just negotiating something where you prioritize what happens so he does what he needs to do, but sequence it so that it maybe can serve our ends also. So, and then finally, I want to address a comment that Commissioner Pauly made about public process and selection of an RF of a consultant. I agree with what's been said. I think this is so important to the community that the public should have as much say in the selection of a consultant. And I think one mechanism might be helpful in that regard is what the city's used before, for example, in recruiting department heads, where there's just like a reception, where the citizens can come to Highcliffe, the back room, and noodle and interview and chat with the proposed consultants and talk to their commissioners or the city manager on, boy, I really think that person really has a beat on things. And they can get their voices heard after talking with people. And then finally, I want to make sure that it's the commission that makes the ultimate call on choosing the consultant and not staff. It's so important to the community. I think it has to be done by the commission who is finally selected. I don't know if the budget of $500,000 under code, I can't remember anymore, makes this a commission selection. But if it's not, I would ask that you pass a resolution making this your decision. Thank you.
That, William Becker and Denise McGriff. Oh, incidentally, James, you're one of the few people that asked for extra time.
Good evening, everybody. William Becker, Oregon City. Yeah, okay, all right. I just, people have articulated what I've had in my mind probably much better than I can today. I just want to encourage you to do what you can to make sure historic preservation is negotiated in as early as possible. That site has the old Electric Hotel, if it's still standing, the old Opera House, if it's still standing. Some of the old buildings' foundations are still there. And I think it's vital for the state, not just Oregon City, that we keep every bit of every structure that we can. And I understand legally we can't go in and designate things, but if the trustee is willing to work with us on some of those aspects, I think it's a question we need to work with and need to ask for. Public access, of course, to that area is also another very important part. But we have a history in this town that nobody else does. And this was the seat of government for what is the entire Pacific Northwest. And that seat started at that mill site. The industry started at that site. And we need to keep every bit of that we possibly can. Not just to interpret, but to salvage what's physically left as well. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Wednesday, and thank you for allowing me to speak, Commissioners. I'm Denise McGriff, and I'm proud to say that I live in the historic 1844 plat of the City of Oregon City. I'm here tonight to support the efforts of the city for a comprehensive review of the Blue Heron site. From a personal and professional standpoint, I just have two minor concerns, and one you've already heard tonight by most of the people that have come up is that I would like to see historic preservation added as one of the values. I understand the process that the due diligence group went through, but obviously Oregon City, being the oldest incorporated city west of the Missouri River, we are historic preservation. Historic preservation is our middle name, and that is one of our community values. I also want to add the fact that I am was unable to read the revised version of the agreement, but the one I saw a few weeks ago basically talked about the MUD zoning, and I appreciate the fact that that has been revised to say that it is one of the zones that could be considered. I don't think that we should be presuming a process when we haven't had it started yet. I do want to add that I understand what the Community Development Director is talking about in terms of moving the process along because it is very complicated. And I understand the need for a thorough but timely review. I'm going to do something that I swore about a year ago that I said I would not do, and I'm going to do it on the record, is that I'm going to offer the Community Development Department my support, both professionally and personally, in this process. As you know, I do wear a number of hats in this community. Right now, I'm Willamette Falls Locks is one of my projects as my work as an advisor through the National Trust for Historic Preservation. Obviously, as a trustee, as an advisor in the trust, I live closest to the locks, and they said, guess what, that's going to be your project, and I said, yes, fine, I volunteer for that. I'm also currently serving as one of your planning commissioners, and as a longtime resident, I get to say that now. I'm a longtime resident of Oregon City, over 25 years now.
Is that the cutoff point?
I don't know. I think there's still. I think if you want to be considered a citizen of Oregon, you still have to do the 50 years, according to James Cloutier from Eugene. So I can't be a member of SNOB. And I'm working on it. So I know that this is important. I know that we have a regional significance. But like some of your other speakers, it's Oregon City. And when I look at that site, we all see so many things, and I think I look forward to working with you all, and I think our community on a process and a program, something we can all be proud of. It's not about who wins or who gets their way, but I think it's about what's going to be best for the community and the region. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Marjorie Hughes.
Good evening again. Margie Hughes. I live in Oregon City. I just have one question. If a private party puts an option to purchase the site, would they be allowed to participate in the visioning?
I don't know why not, but he just said yes. So
we have there's a clause in the agreement that we would do make our best efforts. The trustee would make the best efforts to ensure that any potential purchaser essentially take over this agreement, and that we would sit down and negotiate with them in good faith to try and bring them into this process.
Thanks. That's all I needed to know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think there's a general, I'm not going to say consensus because we haven't talked about it, but the fact that historic preservation hasn't been specifically drawn out, I mean, recognizing historic importance and memorializing it is not quite the same thing as historic preservation. Right. And I think that's something we need to get into as a core value. So we got 4, and I think that needs, whether you come, well, I would say that should be a 5th one that stands on its own personally.
Yeah. Or even just change historic interpretation to historic preservation.
Well, interpretation isn't bad either. I mean,
right.
you have a building, it's nice to know what it was, but
right.
Yes.
But I know you have to take it back.
Well, let me say this. I think the point is well taken that this hasn't been brought to the fore, and I think it's our responsibility to bring it to the fore. Go ahead.
I guess I would say, the 4 values were discussed by all our partners, and they've brought us to this point where we can start the public involvement process, where that is certainly expected to be a discussion, And I guess I would, we've heard some discussion about it getting it's difficult to require someone to designate or agree to not take down something on a property when you don't know what you want to do with the property. That's what we're trying to do here. It's the planning process to figure out where do we go. I understand the historic preservation component. And in the Shields Oblis Johnson report that we had done, and we looked at multiple scenarios out there on that property, of which retaining historic structures or historic structures with the adjoining buildings that could serve for vertical access to buildings or AV, any of the heating, cooling, So we looked at those in terms of, historic preservation is specifically said in there that, the saving in energy from demolition, the costs that are embedded in that building, that there are opportunities there. But we're not at a point to make a decision. You could, so that's what we're trying to get to. But I understand your
But
preservation.
We're not talking about a decision. We're talking about the core values.
And we can certainly, I guess, should we, we can have that discussion with our partners,
Yeah, I was
and
gonna say, you have to take it
which
back
is
to
how
our
those were formed
Sure.
originally, and trying to guide us through, a site that we knew very limited information about, and the partners that we brought in were all coming in from different perspectives, and those were what we were able to build that partnership around and get to where we're at today to take that next step. And those aren't the final ones. We know that those are going to expand, they're going to change, they're going to become what the community wants. But it got us to this point to be able to make that next step, which is what we're proposing to do now.
And I understand that, but I don't think any of the partners that we are engaged with would argue to maybe add the fifth.
No, I don't.
Well, I think it was our intention all along, and the wording was
wording
not
is
chosen
bad,
right.
yeah.
I mean, the wording is not really, does not really convey what I think we've all been saying.
But I don't think
But-
any of our partners would object to it.
Commissioner Roth.
Okay, I have several things. Number one, I didn't understand your timeline deadline. What you said, May 20, was it something to do with the election?
No.
No.
What was
That's
the May
timeline for the RFP's process?
Right, but
Reviewing.
why do we have a deadline?
Because the trustees agreed to hold the property
Till
April of 2014.
Right.
We're trying to get through the selection process as quickly as we can to allow sufficient time for the robust public involvement, the public outreach,
Okay.
and then also, we still need to put together a land use application and get
Right.
it to a hearing.
Okay.
So you start working those backwards.
Yeah, I just didn't understand what
Yeah,
your
so
deadline was.
so we're trying to be aggressive on the front end
Okay.
to allow more time to engage.
And then the trustee has all of these attachments, and they have reviewed all of these attachments.
They've been provided those, yes.
Okay. But we don't know if the review has taken place. Okay. Okay, I've got some more questions down here if I can get to them. You talked about inviting the chamber and different various people to the RFP review, but I didn't hear McLaughlin and Kenema, the neighboring
No,
neighborhoods.
we talked about chamber.
Yeah, we talked about it.
No, he made a
I
list.
I
Oh, he
I
did?
had talked about PGE, Port of Portland, Willamette Falls
Right.
Heritage Area Coalition, Main Street, property owner, or if it's going to be the downtown committee, Preservation Advocate, Habitat River Advocate, Citizen at Large.
Mhm. But the neighboring neighborhoods or the new neighborhood, it seems like they should be part of that process, since it's a land use issue of sorts.
Well, then you should also invite the chamber.
Well, he said that, yeah.
Not
No,
Chamber
he
of
never
Commerce,
said chamber.
no.
No, he didn't say
No, I didn't.
Port of Portland.
Yeah, we're at, and if that's what the commission wishes, we will certainly do it. We're at 18 people.
Yeah.
On a RFP review and selection.
Right.
At some, it's a big time commitment. Not that folks won't do it, because it is such a significant project, and we hope everyone will engage. But at some point, we have to stop. We
Right.
can continue to add folks.
But it could be like the Urban Renewal Budget Committee.
Aren't we already? I'm almost there.
Okay, my last point is, in discussion with Brent Barton, he has agreed to write legislation or have legislation written for the Comprehensive Land Use Planning Coordination 197-772, which takes the private property owners, they can refuse to have something designated and to change that legislation. But he will do it only on the advice of the entire commission.
Mr. Sutton, you kind of know the history on this
Let me
one.
make a comment, then Ed Sullivan can speak. You might recall the Supreme Court ruled on what is it, when the
Nolan and
public
Dolan
entity
exactions.
takes the property This is recent.
Condemnation?
Condemnation.
It's, yeah.
And
Kilo.
And actually, the Supreme Court said really a jurisdiction couldn't do it for almost any reason. Immediately, the state legislature jumped in it and made sure that couldn't happen. I don't really think a bill like that to tell a property owner who bought a piece of property wasn't designated and says now you've got to designate it. I don't think it's going to fly in the legislature. I don't think it'll fly in any legislature. That's my opinion. But
You could write it and present it.
You can write and present it, but I personally have a difficulty in if I had a piece of property, it wasn't designated, I owned it, I invested in it, and then somebody else wants to designate it, even if it is in a governmental agency, I really would have personally problem with having my private property taken that way. But Ed, you want to say something? That's just a personal opinion about how I feel about it.
I think the case that you're referring to is Kilo versus City of New London, which came out about 4 years ago. And that was a case in which a divided U.S. Supreme Court on a 5-4 vote upheld the right of the City of New London to condemn property for redevelopment. As a result of the Kilo case, a number of states took advantage of the of Justice Stevens' majority opinion to say, it's really up to you, and you can change your legislation. The Institute for Justice, a property rights group, went to a lot of state legislatures and also went to the ballot. And the voters or the legislatures in many states, and I think it's over 30, put sideboards on the acquisition of property for redevelopment, not for clearing up slums and acquisition of roads or libraries, but for redevelopment. Oregon did that too, to some extent. It would not be impossible to acquire the property for the city or for a public use. It probably will be expensive, even in the current land use designation that you have on the property of industrial. There's not as big a market for that. To go to the second question, which is, can we go to the legislature and ask them to amend ORS 197-772? And the answer is yes, you could always ask them. It's a statutory problem. It's a statute that was passed over Governor Roberts' veto by a 2/3 vote of the legislature. Politically, this is pretty late in the year to be introducing legislation unless someone wants to use their chits and see if they can get majority interest in it. I'm not sure about that. But it is possible, and the legislature, what the legislature passed, it can modify. And it's really a political issue for them to deal with. It's not impossible, and there's no constitutional bar from your doing any of this.
Thank you.
We're having our discussion now. Any other commissioners have something to say?
I kind of see this as a multi-issue. So tonight, we want to enter into this agreement, hopefully, with the trustee. Then, on a side note, we want to talk about how we're going to do the consultants, hiring, the RFP, and who will be on that committee or not. And another note is historic preservation. So it's kind of a 3-layer thing to me, okay, in my opinion. So personally, I'd like to just tackle one. Can we work on the agreement and then work on the RFP and then work on the...
It's all interwoven.
Yeah.
But we don't have to vote on RFP or anything tonight.
No, but it's part of the consent of the agreement, is having those things worked out prior to that. Those things all work into that agreement.
Okay, so let's work on the RFP.
Well, what I would suggest is that we who all are signatures to the RFP?
Can I actually ask a question?
Oh, I've just asked a question.
So the commission would give direction, the city manager would sign on behalf of the city. The bankruptcy trustee would take it to the bankruptcy court to get their approval.
So there's two entities only.
Correct.
What
The
you
city-
said on the RFP or on the
No, I meant
consent?
on this on this.
On the agreement.
My apologies if I misspoke myself. I'm talking about on the agreement here.
Those are the two that would be signing on.
Yeah.
So-
Let me pose a suggestion that we could pass on the RFP, and then as part of the passing of the RFP, that the statement be made to the included in the RFP that the city's commission votes to have historic preservation as a value. Kind of a sidebar to the passing of the RFP, so it is clear that what the position of the city commission is. What I don't want to do is put some things in the RFP that will actually kill the RFP. Excuse me, I'm saying that wrong. In the agreement, that would actually kill the agreement, but that the will of the city commission is clear. Any issues with that?
I don't get what you're saying.
What I'm hearing, and tell me if this is not what you have in mind, is that you would consider and adopt the main agreement, which contains the RFP, but you would give direction and let it be known that one of your core values and what you're directing staff to do is to make historic preservation essentially a core value.
That's right.
All right. The nervous lawyer in me says, hey, it ain't part of the agreement.
Mhm.
All right. But there's an awful lot of discretion that exists under the agreement, and assuming that that Mr. McKittrick signs off on it, you probably will have the direction that you desire. I would always want it in writing, but it's possible to do this.
I'm concerned about the timeline that's put forward here.
I understand.
And I would think that a direction of the commission to have this included as a core value in a statement that accompanies the passing of this agreement would have an impact.
See where you all want to be, and then let me try to word something that might help. If you are not looking at amending the agreement, but you want to communicate both to the trustee and to third parties that you consider this a core value, and you are directing your staff to interpret and implement the agreement as if it were a core value.
Could we do something like that, and then also, as a commission, ask Brent to, or Representative Barton to go forward with the
The
legislation?
best I can do is abstain from the vote. I mean, I've indicated my property rights position in terms of what that is.
Right.
I would, if you put it forward, I probably would abstain as opposed to vote no. But I have a real problem.
I would want to see the legislation.
Yeah, I don't know enough
I don't
about
want
it
to
either.
vote on it until.
Well, he can't write it until we ask him to write it.
Well,
and
then
that's all
he
we're doing
should
is
maybe-
writing. No, all we're doing is
Well,
asking him to write legislation.
If
We're
that's
not-
that's a different issue. Let's take care of this, and we'll come to
Yes.
that one
Yeah.
afterwards.
Yeah, Tony, I had one more question, and that was very early in this conversation. You said the bankruptcy trustee agrees not to abandon the property until. Does it mean? Does that mean until he's going to abandon after that date?
He has the
He has
ability
the
to.
right.
He has
He has the
right.
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 Okay.
Right.
He's giving up, he's agreeing to not abandon it, which he could do tomorrow.
Okay,
He can
right.
Once
do it
we
right
enter
now.
into a contract, he will not abandon it until April unless directed so by the bankruptcy court.
Right.
Okay, but even then, he may not.
Well, if the bankruptcy court directs him to, he will have no choice but to.
Regardless of what he wants.
Okay.
Our attorney, I think, is working on the
I'll work on some language. If you want
Is
to.
that before you do that? Is that generally agreeable? What I suggested?
What?
A statement.
In addition to the agreement.
For the historic preservation? Absolutely, yes. yes.
Mayor, can I offer a suggestion there? Just to keep it to 4. I think what it says in there is historic and cultural interpretation. We could say historic and cultural interpretation and preservation. I think that was the
that would
what
be
was
fine. I just don't know if the agreement what the reaction of the trustee would be on that.
right. And while the city attorney's working on that, what I'm going to suggest though is that we add that preservation word to the 4 values that are articulated by our commission, and that we share that with our other partners and ask them to concur with us.
Yes.
Because I think that's, I know our staff has been operating all this time thinking that that is one of the values.
Yeah.
That's why we've been working with SHPO, and we've had all this documentation done on the historic resources on the site, because we've always thought that that was one of the, at the forefront. So I think clarifying that would be helpful.
Do you think that would be any problem with the partners?
I don't think so with a couple of them.
I don't know about but you've heard, when we talk about preservation, you've heard it's kind of like sustainability. It means something different to everybody.
Everybody. Yep.
Okay, so we need to keep it broad because we don't know. We don't have enough details to make a decision yet.
Yeah, we don't want to make
That's
a
the hard
decision.
part of the whole thing for all of us.
We all, understand Oregon City's history and the significance of this site and the amazing story that's there. And, we in the work we did, there's hundreds of possibilities for what could happen there and what could be saved and what could not be saved,
Right.
or what could be saved but maybe shouldn't. Those are larger discussions that we're trying to get to have.
Right.
For example, if we told the trustee all the partners believe that preservation means save every nail, every piece of sheet metal, the stuff we've been tripping over when we go on our tours down there, if it really meant that, then I think we wouldn't have the trustee at the table.
I would agree.
However, if it meant, it doesn't include the sheet metal roofs and other things that are put up in the last 15 years that are kind of eyesores, then he would probably, I think like Tony says, it's kind of a squishy term because we haven't done enough work down there to define it. But we do have that SHPO work that our staff has done a remarkable job with Christina and the SHPO office.
Well, what I wanted to do is avoid actually tinkering with what is before us to vote on.
Right.
And now, if you suggest we can do that, that's fine.
You can do it legally. The
Yeah.
issue is going to be, is this going to exceed the expectations of the trustee?
Right.
And the other thing is the relationship with your other partners.
Other partners.
So those are the, but there's no legal impediment to you doing that.
Right. It's just,
And I was simply suggesting a separate process, a separate letter that I would send to the other partners and say,
this
how do you
is
feel about it?
basically what we're doing right now. though.
Right.
I mean, it's not part of the agreement. It is basically a consensus of the commission in terms of a formal vote.
Tony, can you tell me where the 4 values are? I'm not.
I was going to point that out, that this is an agreement to bring money. We don't even reference the 4 values
Right.
in the agreement
Right.
with the trustee.
It's
This
in
is an
Exhibit D.
operating agreement.
Pages 2 and 3.
I have a comment to make. We've already tabled this, and we waited another 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 weeks. We're just trying to get to the point where we can start public input.
Yes.
Public input is number one. We just want to get there. And here we have a trustee who's actually offering to bring money to the table. This is a gift. This is an opportunity while the property is still in transition, while he still has some control and some ability to do this for us. This is an opportunity to get to that point. I'd like to see us take it.
Can't read.
I think the community, we owe it to the community.
Absolutely.
To get the process going.
So is that a motion?
That's a motion. To,
Well, don't we need to see what he's saying?
Yeah,
first?
let's get his wording there before we do it. We don't want to move on something we haven't heard. City manager just informed the our
His writing.
city attorney that he couldn't read his writing. I said, nobody can read his writing.
But he read to me, so I think we're.
Okay.
Okay, if you're comfortable with this, the motion would be to move approval of the proposed agreement with the bankruptcy trustee and direct staff to interpret and implement that agreement to include historic preservation as if it were included as a guiding value in the request for proposals in Exhibit D of that agreement.
Okay. Is that your motion?
Yes, that's my motion.
Is it okay?
Wow, your voice changed.
Do I have a sec? Are you going to hit the screen?
You betcha.
Oh, crap.
Moved by Commissioner Pauly, seconded by Commissioner Monk. We'll have the vote in a moment. Unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
for the
Thank you
public
for the-
input. I know I didn't recognize a couple people in the audience, but I thought we had the input we needed to go ahead and have our decision on this particular item. This is not the end of the process.
No.
By a long shot. With that, we go on to the second reading of ordinance 13-1005, proposed amendments to land use appeal process. And Tony Conkle again. I don't know if you have to say a whole lot, but...
So I'm having trouble bringing up the staff report, but this was brought before you for a first reading. These are proposed text amendments to the Oregon City Municipal Code as they address decisions by the planning director for appeals of a type 2 decision, which the planning director does make, as well as clarifying when an appeal is on the record or when it is de novo, essentially a brand new hearing in front of the city commission. There are also minor text amendments to comply with the Oregon revised statutes. You did pass this at your last meeting, so we are requesting the second reading of the ordinance tonight. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Do I hear a motion? And for final adoption?
Motion and final adoption.
Second reading and final
Second
adoption.
reading?
Second reading
And final
and
adoption.
final adoption.
Want to read it?
Yes, you
Yes.
should read it.
Yes.
This is ordinance number 13-1005 as proposed, an ordinance of the City of Oregon City amending Title 17 zoning, Chapter 17.50, Administration and Procedures.
A vote, please. Unanimous vote. And with that, we have Resolution 1307, agreement with Clackamas County for use of right-of-way. This has been a long time in coming. It's been 2 years of negotiation, I think, and I think we've been able to work something out, and so I leave it to our city manager, I presume.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to summarize these points and ask the commission to bear with me, but I'm going to make it brief because it is getting late. I want to summarize it mostly because the bulk of these negotiations we've had, as you know, have been in executive session, so we want to make sure the public is aware of the points we've raised. For almost 2 years, the City Commission has asserted its home rule authority through its municipal code in requiring a franchise fee of Clackamas County. During much of that time, the then county, as it was currently led, was insisting that the code didn't necessarily apply to them because they were doing something unique and so on and so forth. That led to the City Commission sending a demand letter, essentially, to the county, insisting that they either obtain a franchise and comply with municipal code or get their project out of the city within a certain date. Shortly thereafter, there was an election. We had some new county commissioners. They asked this commission for an extension of 45 days, which you granted. During that 45 days, we had a number of negotiation meetings with the county elected leadership as well as their staff. Commissioner Pauly and Commissioner Mumm were part of our negotiation team in those meetings. And that has led us to a different view of the agreement. I think probably the breaking point in my view was the first large meeting that Commissioner Ludlow called at the county offices about a month ago. And when he said nearly at the beginning of the meeting, I've had conversations with county council. It's clear to me from my former experience as a mayor that cities can charge franchise fees and often do, and that the City of Oregon City has a legal authority to do this. And the question really is, whether we pay a fee and how much and how we implement it. And so we did get past that breaking point, and then we started actually working on solutions, real solutions. And so what we have before you tonight on your public agenda is a franchise agreement. The agreement will be effective retroactive to December 1st, 2012. That's the date that the county admitted that the system had been activated within the city. The term is 20 years for the franchise. The franchise will be the greater of 6% of the county's gross revenues from its network inside the city, or a minimum annual fee of $12,000 per year. So again, it's whichever of those two figures is the greater. After January 1st, 2014, the minimum annual fee will increase annually based on the Portland Area Consumer Price Index. That's another important feature of the agreement. The first franchise fee payment is due January 31st, 2014, and will cover the first 13 months of the franchise, so the first payment will be a minimum of $13,000 because there's actually 13 months covered instead of 12 thereafter. The county will pay an interim right-of-way usage fee of $21,000 up front as part of this agreement. Let's see here. The county has also agreed to the city's standard indemnification language, and this is language that we require of all of our providers to indemnify us against lawsuits for activities that they conduct in the right-of-way. And that is the bulk of the agreement, with one more thing. While the franchise will be authorized the county to operate, they still must obtain right-of-way permits and other approvals that are required in the city's municipal code for every other franchisee. So with that, unless there are questions.
Apparently, we have a motion. I should point out to the audience here that I think we pretty well understand what's happened here. So the lack of discussion on our part is simply because we've got a long history and we discussed it to death. So,
Mayor, I really would like to compliment my staff, mostly Nancy Ide, John Lewis, Nancy Krushauer. I mean, there were about 10 or 15 of us involved in this. I think Nancy Werner at Barry Elsner did a fantastic job on this. And this was not a fight the city wanted to have. Most cities made the determination early on it wasn't one they were willing to tackle and wasn't one they could win. And the commission did stand its ground and got a lot done. And I really compliment, too, the new commission members at the county have done an amazing job on this, and appreciate their help as well.
Well, we have a motion right now from Commissioner Mumm, waiting for a second.
Can you speak your motion into the record?
Move to approve resolution number 13-007, agreement with Clackamas County for use of city rights of way.
Seconded by Commissioner Pauly. Vote, please. And not surprisingly, it was unanimous. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you.
Did you?
Yay!
President Roth, did you want to introduce a motion for legislation?
I would like to. Can I do that now, or can I do
Well,
it in the future?
Well, I suppose you could do it now if I don't know what the deadline is in terms of submitting legislation. So
It's passed, so somebody's going to have to use their chits to
Yeah, he said he
either
still
a
has
committee
two.
bill or he's got two.
Right. He's still got two
Okay.
that he can pull in.
All right.
So I'd like to move that we instruct, that's not the right word,
support.
request that our local representative submit amendment to Comprehensive Land Use Planning Coordination 197.772.
Specifically for the purpose of?
Do you want to take away the owner consent, or in limited circumstances? What do you want to do?
We want to not take away, but limit it in circumstances
What circumstances do you want? I'm sorry to put you
when
on the
it's for the
spot.
public good.
Okay. All right, that's fine.
Or the public
And I
interest.
can help. I can
Okay.
help with that.
Okay. So I think that's it.
You got a motion? Do I hear a second?
Where are we? Oh, I have a motion.
Let's already go.
You know,
There's no-
There's no
sorry
second.
that-
The motion died.
sorry.
Okay, never mind.
Okay.
Okay, we'll go on to the consent agenda. Oh, shoot.
Moment.
We can pass the consent agenda, but I'm going to have a question on one of the items afterwards, okay? But we can go ahead with the consent agenda.
Move to approve consent agenda.
Wait.
Oh,
Carol, or Commissioner
Carol.
Pauley already hit it.
Sorry.
Oh, I did? No, I don't think so.
It's
Yeah,
okay.
it's
I'll go in
already
favor.
moved.
I just ask a question afterwards. That's fine.
Okay. I wanted to say something, though. Our city recorder already made a reminder at, I think, the last motion, but this has been an issue ongoing since we got the computer system. It annoys me to no end. Do not press the button unless you've made the motion verbally, that you've made a motion, and do not second it with the button unless you've seconded it verbally to the audience, because no one in the audience knows when we're making motions, and the button will be pushed before the motion is even made, and then someone will make the motion, and it turns out that someone else has pushed it, and no one in the audience sees any of this that happens, and it's
Right. That's a good reminder.
Yes.
It's a
we
very good
have.
reminder.
I just wish we would remind ourselves that we have to say it. Just do it the old way, and that the button's an afterthought after it, because it appears in the audience that things are getting passed and moved forward, and no one knows what happened.
That's
and
a
it
good reminder.
really, really bothers me. So let's try to do better on that.
Thank you. Okay, the motion to approve the consent agenda made by Carol Pauley and the seconder, Kathy Roth. It passes unanimously. My question will be to John Lewis on the Pearl Street. Excuse me. It's a street widening. Are there sidewalk issues that we're dealing with at the same time or not?
There's an existing sidewalk and stairway that are in that section of roadway.
Right.
And we'll have to reconstruct and slightly reconfigure to make the wall fit. And unfortunately, the grades there are so steep that we won't be able to improve the the ADA access there, but you'll continue to have a walkway through there.
Okay. Thank you. That was my only question. With that, communications, being the city manager.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have a number of things tonight, but I'll try to keep it quick. First, Labor Director Maureen Cole has an announcement she'd like to make.
Hi, I just wanted to remind you about our big event is happening next Thursday night. Author Cheryl Strayed is coming. And because we are limited in seating, we are actually issuing tickets, which we are start handing out tomorrow at 10 a.m. And we expect a lineup out the door tomorrow morning, actually. It's going to be really interesting to see what that looks like. And because this is such a big deal, we're actually closing the library half an hour early, too. So I'd just like to give people a heads up of that, because we don't like to close unless we have to, but we think it's going to take quite a while to set up 100 chairs. Although we have already practiced it, so we know exactly how we're going to do it. So
And that's a week from tomorrow, right?
Yeah, a week from tomorrow. And then tomorrow night is Bacon Bit, Dorothy Brown Quiser, who actually did the entire trail in 152 days just last summer. So those two events would be like two great events to see, to get both
Very
views.
cool.
Yeah.
Bacon Bit?
Well, if you've read Wild, you know that you are on that trail, you get a nickname.
Oh, that's
And
okay.
her nickname is
Okay.
Bacon Bit. And she is a bit. She's
Okay.
tiny, too. 152 days. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. Next, I'd like to mention I did get the letter that Mr. Boyce talked about, and I like the name, Two Rivers Neighborhood Association. And I'm going to ask the city attorney if the commission if there's a consensus for this to move forward. I'm going to ask the city attorney to investigate the approval process for you to essentially recognize another neighborhood association. And they have a map here, and if you want, I can pass this out, and then you can think about it for a couple of weeks, and then we can put it on your agenda for further consideration. Yes?
Question, is this what was originally the CIC
Right.
on the map?
Right.
Is that what they're?
Right.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, it's got a map of sorts, but I don't think it would do you much good to see it, but that's what they submitted. I think I know what the area is, but I'm not sure I could tell from the map.
Okay, and they gave you a letter, so.
Yes, they did, and I can send that letter out to you.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and send.
Yeah.
We'll go ahead and send that out
And
first
then
thing tomorrow.
The CIC looks at that then, or?
I think so.
It's been a while since you created one of these, so I
That's
think
right.
he's going to look
It's
at
been
the.
several years.
He's going to look at
Okay.
the code and
And
see
that
what
comes
it's.
back to you.
Okay,
Yeah.
yes, thank you.
So I wanted to make you aware.
Thank you.
Also, the next report is just sort of amazing to me because I started my career in law enforcement almost 30 years ago, and I've never seen statistics like Chief Conrad is going to share with you tonight. In any city where I've been a manager or even where I was a patrolman, we just didn't have these kind of numbers. So, Mike,
Crazy.
do the honors.
Yeah, I'm really pleased to report tonight. I think we mentioned before that we had just recently gone through our reaccreditation process, and part of going through the accreditation process is we're required every year to do an annual report on officer complaints, how many complaints we receive from the citizens. And a couple of commissioners and the mayor will probably remember back in 2010, I reported that we had 6 complaints. And at that time, I was almost hesitant to bring it to the commission's attention because I thought there's no way we could ever replicate that again. And then I was pleased the next year, and when we had 4. And we actually decreased that by a little bit. And this year, I'm proud to report we only had 3 complaints last year.
Wow.
And so I
Going
think it's
in the
just
right direction.
a
That's
great
incredible.
indicator of what a great job our officers are doing on the street. And you got to remember the literally the thousands of contacts we have with citizens every year, whether it's on traffic stops or domestic violence. A lot of times we're taking enforcement actions, we're taking people into custody, we're going to their houses, we're taking their kids away from
It
them.
is.
And to only have 3 complaints against officers.
Great.
And of those 3 complaints, it was found that none of the officers violated any of their policies or procedures or laws, so they're all they're unfounded, what we determined to be unfounded in their complaints. So really good news for the
Wow.
officers. So.
In the Kansas City Metro, we would have more complaints than that per officer in some years. So that's just amazing. It's just amazing statistic.
That's great.
It's almost hard to believe, but thank you, Mike. Wonderful job.
I just would comment at a brief conversation at a coffee shop with one of the sheriff's officers was commenting on what, in her opinion, what kind of an excellent police force that Oregon City had. So, yeah.
Okay, so next, there's been this conversation about the Gladstone Trolley Bridge, Oregon City Gladstone Trolley Bridge. And the railroad is eager to make a gift of that to someone.
Yes, I'm sure they are.
And,
They don't care who, right?
I got a call from the city administrator in Gladstone this week, and we had a conversation about it, and there's quite a bit of interest in his community in applying for a grant. And Metro has a grant that would provide funds for a feasibility study to see to study the feasibility of that bridge becoming part of their trail system. And then I think our Public Works Director, John Lewis, has also had some conversations with representatives from Gladstone and from Metro. My concern about this project is while I think it's wonderful to consider the feasibility, and it's wonderful for us to be on this side of the river saying, come and join us anytime you want. I'm very concerned about the liability of the structure, the long-term liability of it. Very concerned about the complete lack of any maintenance funding that we have, or any maintenance funding down the road that I can perceive that we might have. So I just don't. I just want to make sure I am on the record of advising you not to take any ownership or any liability for that structure, but I don't think there's any harm in studying the feasibility. Now, Gladstone, as I understand it, has asked that we be a co-signer on the request for the grant from Metro. Is that correct?
Well, I spoke to the Metro Parks Director that was actually sponsoring the grant and offering to write the grant because Gladstone didn't have enough staff to do that. And she indicated that the grant proposal, she didn't say that Gladstone was asking for that. She just said that the grant proposal was more likely to be successful if there was co-applicants between the city and between Oregon City and Gladstone.
I have no problem with the study at all. I know Portland Traction Company at one time had ownership of it. Was that the original urban interurban bridge?
I think so.
So I mean, its historical significance is tremendous. I agree with you. If Union Pacific gives it, it's a mistake. It's one of these what's the term? Gift.
It's the gift that keeps on giving.
No, that's not the one.
White elephant.
Huh?
White elephant.
Yeah, the white elephant gift. The point is, I think it has to come up with the responsibility of them dealing with the current issues that exist there at a minimum.
Right.
Because we have undermining of the support abutments there, as we did a few years back, and it's like requesting, in my opinion, the Corps of Engineers to give us the locks. They have to do more than that. they have to kick in money.
So my question of you tonight is whether you're comfortable with us signing on to study the feasibility as long as we're specific and clear that we won't take on any liability, we won't take on any cost for maintenance or any of those other yes.
I want to let you know, I was in this meeting with John, and I let them know very clearly that there's no way I would ever support this bridge. We have one right up the river. I mean, we don't need another pedestrian bridge when there's no money to take care of something like that.
Yeah, well,
I look at it from the historical perspective. I mean,
Right.
The trolley trails come into public ownership itself, so we got that. And I agree, no liability, but I think it would be nice from a historical perspective if we could actually maintain the integrity of the route that was taken, even though it's not being used by a trolley.
Yeah.
I agree with you absolutely. We cannot take on the responsibility of maintenance.
But you are okay with the grant?
Yeah.
Signing on to
Sure.
the grant?
Sure.
Okay.
One other thing I'd like to add is that today Metro doesn't know what amount they think should be requested in their grant application. And one of the concerns about these are funds that we'd be competing with for the other grant application that we're preparing, which is for Malala Avenue. And I guess I would also like, I had heard at one point in time Metro was thinking about $200,000, which I think is reasonable, and probably, I know there's not a lot of funds in that grant program, but anything more than that I think would be too much. So I was kind of feeling like maybe we could say we'd only support it if there was something at less than $200,000.
Okay, that's fine.
I guess I misunderstood something that I read in the paper. I guess that there are two proposals for. Is that the STIP funding?
No, the STIP funded projects we submitted
so the Malala is not a STIP funding.
No, Malala didn't get any STIP funding.
No, that's what I thought. But so we have a request in for additional money for Malala. Then
we're applying for the same regional flexible funds through the Metro for Malala Avenue as well. So that's something we're putting together right now. At the same time, they're putting this other grant application together. So part of me feels like it's competing for another project that I don't know. To me, Malala's got a lot more merit, and
I would agree.
Well, not only that, but I would hate to compete for one thing, but I would also hate to. That sends a certain message too. If we're signing off on a grant that competes with our own, that we have more of an interest, than we really do have, and it's pretty clear that we don't want to own that bridge.
I think
that we pretty much as a city don't want to have anything to do with it. And I think if we sign off on to start the process, it gives an impression we have some interest in that. I think it would be great. Maybe it's not a bad idea for us to send some sort of a letter that says, if this process goes forward, we as a city would love to see that be used as a trail at some point, and are supportive of that bridge, maybe being used as the future, but
Would,
we don't
would you
want
rather
it.
us send a letter to that effect than co-sign on this?
Oh, absolutely.
Because John and I, we had so many fast-moving pieces today.
I mean-
I literally didn't know that we had a competing project
Right.
until he just said that.
Because I think as a city, we haven't, I mean, if somebody else wants to take it on,
I think
and
you're
someone
right.
else wants to go through the
Yeah, I-
process of the grant, we as a city would, I think, gratefully support
Right.
having that used as an access for a trail, but we don't want to own it, and we don't want to maintain it, and we don't want to compete with,
think we
I
can
think
say
we
that.
shouldn't.
Okay.
That was a good.
All right,
Well, it
well-
also tells Metro that
Yeah.
this is a, I think.
Okay.
So I think I know what the call is tomorrow to Metro, and just let them know that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Probably not.
And then last but not least, your commission goals booklet is done. It is finished, and it has a glorious picture of the falls on the front.
Yeah.
It's also on your website, and we will be distributing this far and wide and encourage you to do the same, and we'll stay focused on every one of the goals that are in there, and you'll see them being funded as best we can in the upcoming two-year budget. That's all I have for this evening.
Great.
Just one thing, I expected at the last commission meeting that there had been at least two people speaking to issues they've had with the clients of the Father's Heart Ministry.
Yes.
I understood that the reason that the two may have not showed up at the last meeting is that they were going to bring in a lot more people to speak to it. We didn't have people speaking to that particular issue. I know there are several residents, and you've seen emails, I think, that have been going back and forth on this particular issue. I'm going to meet with Lieutenant James Jim Band, excuse me, Jim Band with Terry. I don't know if you're going to be joining that meeting tomorrow too. Yeah,
I think I'm going to be there, and the chief will be there as well.
So three of us will be meeting with Terry Gant, Terry and her husband. That name escapes me at the moment. Are the people that operate the facility to see what we can do to deal with some of these issues that have come up. Code enforcement, I understand, has been very busy in removing illegal campsites and so forth, and I've seen police officers also out there
been really busy.
dealing with some of the people that are occupying those facilities.
They're occupying a lot of our time and a lot of the other
Right.
city facilities, businesses, and residences
Right.
have been.
Yes. And businesses have been hurt by their.
So we'll be having a meeting with them tomorrow.
Mayor, I neglected one thing from my reports that may be germane to some of the citizen comment tonight, and that is that Main Street Oregon City is sponsoring a capstone project with a group of graduate students to study what the barriers and assets might be for applicable residential housing in the downtown. I think you folks know about that. In fact, when Main Street met with us as a group, they mentioned that they had applied for that. The study will include things like new traffic calming design features for Highway 99 and other thoroughfares in the city. Some of them, I sent you an email earlier today that some of these students may be reaching out to commission members, and we actually encourage that they call you and interview you and get your thoughts and input about traffic calming and other things in the downtown that would inspire you. They asked me straight up, what would make you want to move to downtown Oregon City and live live there, buy a place and move in there as a resident. So they'll be asking you probably similar questions.
Students from where?
They're from, they're from Portland. They're from the law school. I believe they're law students. I'm pretty sure they're law students. But we'll be sending out an email explaining it all. I think that was in my email. And the lead student's name is Kate Drennan. I think there's 6 of them. And they're kind of like a little mini consulting firm, and they're really excited about the work, and they'll give us some objective views of the city that we don't probably have on our own. So I think that's good.
The other thing I want to mention is that Kurt Schrader was given a tour of some of the businesses on Main Street, and I was given the opportunity to accompany him. I did go into Super Genius, and I was impressed by the number of people they employ. There are 25 full-time people. And they had a screen demonstration of what their kind of products look like, and they were as good as you would see on Jurassic Park movies and so forth. It was extremely impressive. And we continued on. I don't remember the name of the of the business, but the one that's going to open up the wine shop there in the one corner of Bush's, and they're doing some fantastic work there trying to get that going. Their intent is to eventually have a food operation there as well as the wine, but that'll be later in their plans. But they're excited. They think they'll have it open on April 1st. So that'll be really nice. Anybody else have something to say?
Yeah.
Yes.
I have, Betty and I have been working on the water, and I know we weren't going to call it rollback. What were we going to call it?
Setback.
Set.
Reset.
Remix.
Something. Anyway, I'm
Something
still
like
calling it
that.
rollback because I can't remember. So we've been working on that, and I've presented to two neighborhoods. One is the Two Rivers neighborhood. I did a presentation to them, and the other was Park Place. And in both cases, the response was 100% in support.
Oh, good.
Good.
That's
So,
good.
and the Park Place had probably 30 people there.
That's
Excellent.
great. Wonderful.
Thank you for doing that.
And I'm doing McLaughlin tomorrow.
Did you tell all their neighbors and friends?
Yes, I did.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, I've got the pipes in my trunk if anybody wants to see them.
Thank
it.
you. Thank you for that.
And Betty Mum, Commissioner Mum.
Well, Rocky wanted.
I would like to point out that both Commissioner Roth and Commissioner Mum signed up under the wrong agenda item to speak. I have signed up on the correct one, but I will let her.
We are old school.
That's okay, Rocky. You
You're
go.
old, maybe, but
You young thing, go down.
don't break the Abernathy elm.
Go, Rocky.
Okay, so I just wanted to say that I can't remember now. The second weekend of the play at the high schools this weekend, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night. It's 6 short comedies directed, student directed, and that's in the Black Box Theater, 7:30 for the next 3 nights, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Oregon Ghost Conference is this weekend at the Pioneer Center all weekend. And don't normally do this for West Lynn, but I thought, if you've been watching TV, and if you're at home watching it right at this
West
moment,
Lynn?
American Idol.
Oh,
right? So,
yes. Yes.
I believe her name's Aubrey Cleland, who is in the top 10 girls
16.
of American Idol, and they vote. I think they narrow that down. Then they sang last night, and then they narrow it down tomorrow night. And she's from West Lynn, which I think is pretty incredible. So I would encourage people to vote for her.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. West Oregon City, yes. West Oregon City girl. Oh, well, yeah, that's a good play too. The girls basketball state playoffs is this weekend as well.
They're playing Beaverton tomorrow. That's in the semifinals,
Right.
but they are going.
So girls basketball tournament this weekend. This
Kids
weekend.
everywhere.
Yeah.
Did that? Were you following up on Kathy Roth and what she was talking about? And he broke into your train of thought by any chance?
No.
Oh,
No.
okay, very good.
Mine are separate.
I wish there was a mechanism getting these two requests on both sheets there.
What?
I got it on the floor, and they were there, and
Well, because you're
Commissioner...
on mayor, not on commissioners.
Huh?
You're on the agenda item for mayor, not on commission comments.
In any case...
Anyways.
In any case...
There is an update coming next
There's an
week.
update, because so everybody is on the same list would be
Yeah.
very helpful.
Oh,
That's
got
the
it.
point I was trying to make.
I see.
Not that anybody erred, like you were suggesting happened, but that, in fact, we don't have all the information on the same screen. I was not being critical of you, Commissioner Smith.
Mine says update available.
Huh?
Mine says update available. Yours
Your-
doesn't.
Can I go now?
We're still talking.
Yeah, you have something we're contributing. Go ahead.
I just wanted to make sure that David Fraser and the rest of the staff were aware. I've heard a couple of comments about people coming by City Hall, and the white Oregon City trucks are in the visitors parking. please make sure that Oregon City staff does not take up the visitors parking out in front. Because, we have that for the seniors and the,
Right.
just.
Commissioner, if you get those complaints and they're willing, or you're willing, if you can send those to me so we can just track them. I had not heard that, so
Yes.
we would have been on
It
it
was
already.
just, I knew you would have been all over it. I knew it. Wanted to know if the CIC is now being streamed on the cable access.
It's not yet.
Because I think that's
it's more right, and I understand the concern. It's much larger than just simply saying let's put it out there, and it would be a discussion that we should just have offline. There's just a lot more involved
So do we need
in
to have
it.
that as a work session, or do we need to?
Well, it's a budget item. It's something that we would need to consider the cost. And if
maybe
you
we
do
should have it
one,
as
do
a-
we have to do them all? And I mean, there's a lot more to it. Willamette Falls is now becoming, they're independent of the city,
Right.
and so everything that we do with them is going to be costly. Actually, we have to go out for an RFP to choose a new agency, to
I
broadcasting.
understand. I just
So because of it, so there's a lot more than just simply putting the CIC up there.
I understand.
Yeah, but it's a goal. It's a personal goal of mine to get that done, but it's not going to be quite yet.
Because I'm hoping that Kathy and I can present to the CIC about the water rate situation.
And you want to do it on TV?
And I want to make sure it's out
We
there.
can we can do special events and different things like that because
I
we
just-
do that.
We just really need to
We
make
are a
sure.
special event.
We are a special. Yeah. You should see us.
And I understand you're up for the April 1st.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you.
I thought so too.
One more thing. If I could ask, does this building have an EAD? EID? What is it? Yes.
Yeah.
We do. Okay. Thank you. Where is it located?
I used it earlier.
Oh, okay.
Oh, an AED?
AED.
Oh,
Middle of
I forget what
it,
you
that's
said.
I had my numbers mixed up. I went to a CPR class and I just wanted to make sure our staff here was secure and safe. If I had a heart attack, you would go get it and you would know where to get it.
Do we have one, and do we know where to get it? It's not necessarily the same thing.
I know, but Scott just told me, so I would be safe. You may not. You weren't listening, but now I'm done. Thank you.
Anyway, are there any other comments? Hearing none, adjourn the commission meeting.